Well, good morning. This is Buckley with CollabTalk, and I'm here with Chantal. And why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, Christian, thank you. My name is Chantal Bossé, and I'm out of the province of Quebec in Canada. And right now it's really sunny, but really cold again this morning. Seems like spring has been delayed. It's in installation mode, not done yet.
It's only March. It's not. It shouldn't be spring in Quebec right now, anyway. So,
well, actually, the date on the calendar states that spring has started, but not outside.
Well, so I guess calendar-wise, yes. But every time I've been to like Montreal, it's just been really cold. So I'm just.
We never know. The only thing we know is we'll never know when spring comes or when winter comes. It's a given. So
I also know that part of the world is never get into a taxi. I learned that apparently it's like a thing that like in Montreal, like the taxi drivers are it's known to avoid them. Take an Uber, do not take a taxi.
Well, you know what? Next time you're in Montreal, try Theo. TEO. They're first-class taxis.
Okay.
Very nice people. So now you'll know that you have a very nice quality of service with them.
Well, that's great. So what's your area of focus? What's your MVP within?
I'm a PowerPoint MVP since 2013. So yes, I do work a lot with a tool, but I also do a lot of presentation work, speaker coaching. Do a lot of the part of storytelling, message structure. Mm-hmm. And my company, CHABOS, has been going on since 2004, and we focus on presentation and visual communication. So anything visuals or how to bring the words of the people we work with in a more visual way. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people say, oh, you'll always consider PowerPoint as the first tool. Not always. Sometimes it depends on the venue, depends what your topic is. But being more visual, yes, these days with technology makes our lives easier. But some people in a small room, sometimes I'll say, just have a whiteboard, draw on it, right. Have some prompts. So that's also a way to be more visual.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you hear, so like in my world, coming from the SharePoint side of things and working with a lot of, IT pros, a lot of dev, other MVPs, especially, that they'll go in and they'll criticize somebody for going to an event and using a lot of PowerPoint around that. But then they tend to miss the point. I mean, it's funny. I did this event in Branson, Missouri, and I had several people come up after my session where I did show the product. I showed screenshots of different things, and for a 1 hour delivery, I didn't want to. As some will just go and sit down in front in a darkened room and start walking through and showing you code and that side of thing. And that might be very relevant for devs. But when you're presenting to, especially a mixed topic that you have a blend of business decision makers and end users, as well as deeply technical people within that, you have to convey that story. And
you're right. You have to know who's in the audience.
Right.
Who's in the audience? Because if you just sit down behind a laptop screen to do some demos and you have some people that are not familiar with it, you'll just lose them at not even half point.
So I had to ask, did you make it to the MVP summit that just happened?
Unfortunately not, because I had a concussion, couldn't travel at all. Ooh. And so I got my peeps just Skype me during a lunchtime at one point saying, hey, we miss you, but I didn't make it. And I was really bummed because all the topics this year, I really wanted to attend some of the keynotes and everything, but I missed out.
I know that it's funny, I have a good friend that's based out of Perth and just received his MVP. So Paul Colmsey And so he's again in the office services space, and is just longtime SharePoint guy, but now he's just really passionate about Power Apps and building the business applications, and has just fully embraced that side of things. And I was like, Paul, you're not going to make it to your first summit. And his comment and something about he had a family activity thing going on where he just said, look, it's just not a priority to go and do that. And I was thinking about that. It was my 8th time, and it's fantastic. But I mean, I completely understand. It was a lot to take a week off. I'm paying for it, catching up.
Oh, you're right. And I knew that the intensity, whether it's the sessions, it's the keynotes, all the networking and the night events and stuff like that, part of me wanted to be there, but health-wise, I knew that I would have been paying for it many weeks afterwards.
Yeah.
So I had to take the saddest decision I had to make in the past few years. But you're so right, because that's when we get to mingle with people we don't get to meet at all sometimes.
Yep.
Or from us, the Canadian MVPs is not a huge crowd. So usually we meet once or twice a year.
Wait a second. It was because of the Canadian crowd that there was this whole push of people getting like more jackets like the US MVPs, because it was a pretty dominating force every single year.
And we have to thank
wearing the matching jackets.
Oh yeah, but we have to thank Sim, our Canadian lead, for that. He's such a fantastic guy, because he's the one who created that cohesion within the group, and that sense of being a family within the bigger family of MVPs. So that's why, we're hard to miss when we're at the summit.
But something, and again, I would say, because of what the Canadian MVPs did, there were a lot of people, myself included, that were looking at these different community day events that would happen in Canada that they just didn't exist in the US. And I remember talking to my MVP lead and saying, why are we not doing something like that in the US? And the response was, well, I'm in the US. I mean, we've got the annual summit. I'm like, yeah, but everyone has that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh yeah, well, there's more of the MVPs in the US, and they get together on their own. I'm like, that's not true at all. We've got the annual summit. Like in the SharePoint space, we have different events that we attend, that we go to, that are
you have more locally organized events, and that's okay.
But they're not like these community day events. So they started this up in the US, and I think they've been hugely successful, and they've been these little regional things. Now, the issue still becomes like they had one that the closest to me in Salt Lake City was Denver. And I was scheduled to go to one in the San Francisco Bay Area, ended up not being able to make it, flew and joined the one that was up in Bellevue, Washington, so right near campus.
Yeah.
Ended up going to another one last year in Denver. So it's great to be able to go do that. But again, it was an opportunity. There were no SharePoint MVPs that were at the one in the event in Denver. I hung out with a couple Skype guys and some Windows config manager guys, and
that's when we get to know people from other specialties, and that's why we grow as a group, and that's how we get better. Even with my clients, knowing more about who are the MVPs that can help me out if I run into a technical glitch of some sort. That has been very helpful. And getting to know them also helped me grow on the more technical side of it.
Well, and I guess the other side too is, so here we're talking about MVPs, and for the majority of people watching that are not MVPs at all, and why is this a value? And part of it is, I think it helps illustrate, just how important it is to go and whether you go to an event or find somebody on like in the Microsoft tech community or some other board that's out there, to reach out and connect with people and start having conversations. Because I mean, I'm sure you're the same as me. It's somebody comes out and asks a question, and they always get like the first thing they do and apologize. I don't want to, bother you around this. Like, look, if I were busy, I wouldn't be responding, or we're all busy. But I mean, we're
more than happy to share. That's why we earned our MVP title, because we're sharing with the community. And that's what I've been doing for years, because for me, my passion is communication. So yes, I have tons of knowledge about the tool, and transferring that is easy. But my other passion is making sure we stop having presentations that suck when we get into meetings and conferences. So like one of my colleagues said one time, I'm also on a mission trying to reduce the sucking presentations in this world. And I think that's why I like it. Some of my clients told me at one point, said, Chantal, you're not just a presentation specialist. You're the lead presentation magician in your company. I said, okay, well, thanks. If that's the way you see it, I'm all good with it, as long as we move forward and have better communications. And I guess all the MVPs are doing the same in their own technology.
Yeah. And look, let's be honest, not every MVP is really good at presenting. There are some that are.
It's not always easy.
Right. That
it's not always
excruciating. It can be. That people have different skills. Some are they seem to be 24/7 on different boards and in forums and answering questions that way. And others that are prolific writers, others that just constantly seem to be somewhere on the planet speaking to a user group. And these are all good things. They're different people have different communication styles and different ways of learning. And so we need to have different people with these different skill sets. Well, let me ask you though, I mean, when you talk to these customers, what are some of the ways in which they just outright fail at presenting? I mean, where do you see people struggling the most?
Well, there's the part being scared about public speaking. That is the given. That's probably the number one fear in the whole humanity.
Yeah.
People they're afraid to go in front of the group. And I've seen that with some of the TEDx speakers I coached. And that's one thing. But you have to work on you remembering that you're sharing something, you're sharing value, and we work with them to help them realize there's no way people are against you when you're in front of a crowd. So that is one thing. The other thing is, when they know they'll be speaking, they forget. And I always ask them, okay, I have one burning question for you. What's the one important thing you want to make sure people will remember? And that's good whether you're in technology, you're in finance, you're teaching, whether high school class, university class, whatever. When you lack the clear idea, what are they supposed to remember at the end? That's when you fail, because you're not focused on their needs and you're scattered all over the place. That's when you have huge presentations that seem to be going everywhere.
Right.
So people want to bunch in everything in the little time they have, and they'll just speed through the slides without really thinking, is that worth it? Is that helping my message at the end, or the 1, 2, 3 things that they need to remember at the end when I'm finished?
Well,
so I guess
that's interesting. I was going to say that how there's definitely some presentations that go sideways. Somebody will ask a question, or you'll have somebody in the audience that just derails things. There's other times where people will ask a question. It may appear to go sideways, but the presenter is able to direct it rather, or it may be relevant to like the 3 things they're trying to communicate. And it can actually be very enlightening to have that expanded view where it's a conversation and it's kind of happening in real time versus being presented to.
And you know what? That's also one part that through the years, I've made sure that people learned about try to read your room. Reading the room is trying to figure out, okay, was I misled about the needs of that audience? That happens.
Yeah.
Some people get into a
Sometimes that's my
conference.
strategy, is just to mislead.
Oh yeah. And sometimes you get at one point, you get in front of a group, they told you that they had A, B, and C as their main pain points.
Yep.
You get there and you realize, oh geez, that's really not it. So sidetracking is not necessarily something bad if you're now addressing the real needs of your audience.
Right.
But that means you need to be prepared.
Right.
To be sidetracked.
And also prepare the audience. I mean, for years, so I picked up this, and I do this. It's just become kind of a habit. At the beginning, but before I move through any kind of presentation, we'll say, is like, look, I just want to be clear on what I'm going to be talking about, and the audience for this topic, what it is not. As I don't feel bad, like if you're a dev and you're sitting in my topic, like I have nothing for you. And I just say that, like,
and that's okay.
The business topic, right? And a lot of them that they'll come in and say, no, I was looking for this side. I want to understand.
That's it.
Why we're using this technology, not the sit down, granular, walk me through the steps of how I go in and programmatically, deploy this technology and then start using it. Like, that's not what I go and cover. There's tons of that content.
Definitely. And at least when people know and they made the choice to sit there, they'll get value out of it.
Right.
And for some other times that you get in front of a group and you realize, oh geez, that's not good for them, but you get sidetracked and you have planned for it. And that's the amazing thing. One of my specialties, when I help people plan their content, we plan flexible content into it. So we just use the PowerPoint features that help you either link or open something else or have some hidden content. And that's where the magic happens, especially when you realize that you've been misled in terms of the needs. Even though, like you say, if you have some devs and you're supposed to do some demos, about it, fine. But if you realize the demos you prepared are not what they needed and you have some other stuff planned, then you'll still win because they will get value out of it.
Right. One thing that I learned that is the way I started using PowerPoint many years ago, and before I was, in fact, I've been a long time, Microsoft Office user, even when I was working within IBM technology, and I've been in the collaboration space since the mid '90s, and working with audiences is going in there, and for a couple of years I was doing training. I worked with Hewlett Packard for a year and went around to their multiple locations and did training, but I would have like segments of content that was ready to go. And some of it, the visualizations around that, kind of for that point where I go in and say, like, what are the business problems that you're experiencing, and say, what are you expecting to get? And I love having the whiteboard for that. Like, what are your questions up front based on this topic? I love that. And say, and then even saying, okay, here's the 7 questions. Look, these 2, we're not going to be covering that. That's outside of the scope of this.
That's it.
I have content, or I know a person that I can introduce you to for that. It then satisfies those questions for those people, or at least, it sets the expectations for them.
Yes. And that's the whole point. Giving them value, whether it fits 100% or not is not important. But as soon as they realize I got value out of this, then you satisfy the need. They had to be sitting in front of you.
And that is true whether you're speaking to a user group on a business or technology topic, or internally, within your organization, sharing an update on a project or whatever it is that you're working on. I think that's a great point, is understand what it is, the message you're trying to deliver.
Oh yeah.
Not try to pack too much information into that, provide that summary data, and then enable them to go then do a deep dive, into more information. So here's where you get that for that next level, that next layer.
Exactly. You're better off having less content, but quality content for the needs you'll be addressing than packing everything of all the fluff and bells and whistles you want to put in there, but it won't be helpful. They'll forget about it anyway.
Right. And that can be a struggle sometimes for a lot of
It
presenters.
is.
We all have that experience. Chantal, I mean, this has been great, to go through and to talk about this. I'd love to spend more time on this, but how can people find out more about this topic and get in touch with you?
Well, they can go on my website. It's chabos.ca, CHABOS.ca. My Twitter handle is @CHABOS. I'm on LinkedIn under my own name, Chantal Bossé. And I do things in both languages, French and English. So people that have bilingual needs, they just need to ping me and I'll be more than happy to answer their questions.
Excellent. Well, it was great meeting you and talking to you and learning more about that side of the MVP world, and have a great rest of your day and enjoy your almost spring.
Yeah, it's still in install mode.
Yeah, we just had snow 2 days ago again here, so yeah, I think we're not thinking spring yet. So
no, me neither.
Yeah, right. It was great talking to you.
Thank you, Christian.
Bye.